faculty, hey Johnny, faculty, equity, equity, practical quality, ability, quality, now. Let the printer get away. Faculty, faculty, hey Johnny, faculty, equity, equity, practical quality, ability, quality, now. I asked my wife to wash the floor. Faculty, now. She gave me my hat and she showed me the door. Miss Rossi, hey Johnny, Dossie, hey Betsy, Nackety, quality, now. I married my wife in the month of June. Miss Rossi, now. I brought her home by the light of the moon. Miss Rossi, hey Johnny, Dossie, hey Betsy, Nackety,
I'll tell you, his hosting job is for the birds.
Undead from Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. The monster movie capital of the world. It's the Horror Hall of Fame 2, the second annual All-Star Tribute to Terror. Starring Robert Englund, with special appearances by Pugsley Adams, Adrienne Barbeau, Morgan Brittany, Veronica Cartwright, Roger Corman, The Crypt Keeper, Joe Dante, Brad Dourif, Elvira, Gilbert Godfrey, Tippi Hedren, Ron Howard, Sam Kinison, Lurch, Richard Mall, Vincent Price, Don Rickles, William Shatner, D. Wallace Stone, with lots of horrifying surprises, starting with me. I'm Shadow Stevens.
The Horror Hall of Fame is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft Light, the beer with the big draft taste, and by rich, creamy Nestle Toll House morsels. Make your house a Toll House. And by Ultra Slim Fast, the delicious, nutritious way to lose weight.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host for the Horror Hall of Fame 2, the man of your nightmares, Mr. Robert Englund.
Good evening, and welcome to the second annual Horror Hall of Fame, also known as Close Encounters of the Bird Kind. This is the one night of the year when we get to salute the biggest monsters in Hollywood, the masters of the macabre, past and present, who first dreamed up our favorite nightmares, whether it's the terror from Transylvania or the torturer from Texas. All of this year's honorees deserve to be put away in a place of honor, the Horror Hall of Fame. The fans of our first presenter have watched her get lost in the fog and caught by a swamp thing. Now they should be on the lookout for Two Evil Eyes, the George Romero shocker in which she stars. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Adrienne Barbeau.
Thank you very much. In 1974, the one movie changed the face of horror history. In fact, it changed a few other faces as well. Not to mention a few arms, legs, fingers, a couple of livers. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's first inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Get ready.
In November 1974, the patrons of San Francisco's Empire Theater were treated to a sneak preview. Before it was over, 50 people left in a state of shock. Some demanded refunds. Others rushed to the restrooms. But those who stayed saw something more than just a new kind of horror film. They experienced experienced a nightmare with their eyes wide open. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre has been called a landmark of movie horror. For half a century, horror films had focused on fantasy creatures, supernatural terrors, and accidents of science. Chainsaw changed that by fixing its gaze on the monstrosity of man. What makes its story all the more chilling is that the movie's madmen were inspired by a real-life monster named Ed Gein. When he was arrested by Wisconsin police in 1957, his secluded farmhouse was littered with human bones, and Gein admitted that he liked to wear the skin of his victims. Stories of grave robbing, mass murder, and cannibalism shocked the nation and left an indelible impression on filmmaker Tobe Hooper.
Those images just, they terrified me as a child. They totally freaked me out. And so they stayed back there until it was time to make this movie.
In 1973, Hooper, a native Texan, and co-writer Kim Henkel expanded the Gein story into a screenplay about 5 young people and the murderous family that leads them to the slaughter. The gritty, almost documentary look of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre adds to the film's unsettling air of authenticity. Shooting on a budget of less than $200,000, Hooper avoided elaborate and costly special effects, but chose instead to heighten the horror by skillfully suggesting the terrors left unseen.
We don't show anything. If you can go back and run that movie all the way through, and you're not going to see any actual cutting up or, the only person that really gets bloody is me, and I survived the picture.
The film's infamous meat hook scene is a prime example of Hooper's approach to horror. Though no blood is spilled on screen, the mind's eye perceives every gory detail.
The thing that's compelling about the meat hook scene is just the absolute violence in which the scene is carried off, and the inexorable way that Leatherface goes about his task. It's going to happen, and it's going to get bad. You don't know how bad it's going to get, and I think once the scene is over, you don't really know how bad it was.
On camera, the bloodlettings were faked, but for the actors, shooting sometimes became a painful, real-life ordeal.
I happened to trip over this bucket, and once I had tripped over it, you see, I didn't realize that we would take the scene 13, 15 more times. Well, Toby liked it so much that I had this bucket thing that kicked into the room that he kept it in, and I was sliced.
There are these trees in Austin called mesquite trees, and they have thorns about 2-3 inches thick. And we're running through the woods, and I was supposed to run into a tree branch and knock me out. But I also ran into those mesquite thorns, which the next day had to be removed professionally by a doctor.
Around-the-clock shooting for the climactic dinner scene was the cast's most grueling experience.
You like this, Dave?
Robert Burns, the wonderful art director of the film, had this wonderful props with this chicken head that had been cut off and nailed to a board, and its little feet had been cut off and nailed to this board. And wow, what a great prop. And then they turn the lights on, and this chicken starts to decompose.
He don't like it, ain't that right? You're just a cook. Shut your mouth.
We have head cheese on the table. The smell was just absolutely overwhelming.
We had to call a doctor out because everyone was, throwing up.
Let me put this in some kind of perspective for you. I was in Vietnam in a monsoon, crawling through the mud with people trying to take my life. it was more pleasurable than the 24-hour shoot.
When the Texas Chainsaw Massacre opened, reaction was unparalleled. Newspapers across the nation reported viewers leaving theaters, shaken, outraged, and overwhelmed. Reviewers praised the film's relentless pace and realism, and hailed it as a breakthrough in the cinema of horror. Critic Rex Reed called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the most horrifying motion picture I've ever seen. What might have been a forgettable drive-in feature was recognized worldwide as a turning point in screen terror. After 17 years, audiences still feel its impact.
Chainsaw is one of the only motion pictures ever made in the history of the medium that's never really, truly been out of release since the day it was made. It's shown somewhere in America every day.
I imagine it'll be popular 50 years from now. With that title, people are just going to always be curious.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre may not be everyone's idea of entertainment, but it is undeniably a powerful piece of movie making. And in the history of horror, there are few films whose images are quite so disturbing, or whose sounds are quite so disquieting.
Sally, I hear something. Stop. Stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, accepting for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, its producer, director, and co-writer, Mr. Tobe Hooper.
Thank you. I'd like to accept this on behalf of the cast and the crew and my partner, Kim Hinkle. And I would like to dedicate this honor to Warren Scarron. Without Warren, there may not have been a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Thank you.
You know, hosting the Horror Hall of Fame is a huge undertaking. And when it comes to undertaking, nobody does it better than America's #1 underground star. Please welcome from HBO's Tales of the Crypt, the Crypt Keeper.
Thanks, Robert. By the way, I loved your opening with the birds. They were so terrifying, so menacing, so frightening, so delicious. Tonight we'll be honoring the birds, if there are any left when we return. So don't crow away.
The Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood will be right back.
The Horror Hall of Fame was established to honor monstrous contributions to the horror, science fiction, and fantasy genres. All of tonight's inductees were chosen by the Horror Hall of Fame Board of Directors, whose members have themselves made lasting contributions to the genre. In addition to selecting our inductees, this Odd Squad also chooses the best horror film of the year. Our first nominee is a terrifying tale about a novelist who suffers from much more than writer's block when a twisted fan teaches him a whole new meaning to the word misery.
Will she be her old self now that Ian has dug her out, or will she have amnesia?
Have to wait.
Will she still love him with that special, perfect love?
You'll have to wait.
Not even a hint?
Mm-mm.
Oh, misery's alive! Misery's alive! Oh, it's so romantic. Oh, this whole house is going to be filled with romance. I'm going to put on my Liberace records.
You know, they say that in space, no one can hear you scream. Well, they obviously never met our next presenter. Ladies and gentlemen, Gilbert Gottfried.
Stop it! Stop! Oh, please stop! Stop it! Hi, I'm Gilbert Gottfried,
and I'm here to give you a shriek preview of all the horror films coming out this year. Now, you're probably wondering why I have this space-age yarmulke on. See, the thing is, the producers saw me do my Pee Wee Herman bit on the Emmy show, so they hooked me up to this thing to keep me from saying anything that might be considered offensive or just inappropriate about the movies or the people in this town who have the audacity to... Let's roll the clips. Meet the Addams Family. Boy, I wonder if that's one of those families I offended with my Emmy monologue. I can't believe... This should be a nice, good film.
That's my job.
Trick or...
Guilty as charged. Boy, I know about that. I mean, I do one Pee Wee Herman routine, and all of a sudden, they... A date. This is a perfect movie for a date. Go enjoy yourself. Make a night of it.
Here you go, Ricky. I would have gotten you a full role, but you ain't gonna be here that long. The hell, he's just a kid. He's not a kid. He's a killer. And like it says in the Bible, old enough to kill, old enough to die.
Doesn't say that in the Bible.
It says it in my Bible.
Nice handwriting, Al.
Highway to Hell, which is what the censors at the Television Academy put me through because... Please, take some time out for yourself and see this movie.
You can scoop your own brains.
Alien 3. Boy, I sure felt alienated after I did the Emmys. I mean, I do one with... You should enjoy a nice film like this. Thank you. All right, before I go, I'd like to say one thing about the Emmy Academy. I think they had no right to do what they did. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Joining us now are special effects expert Steve Johnson, the genius behind some of the creature creations in Ghostbusters and The Abyss, and Linnea Quigley, Hollywood's queen of the silver screen. They're going to show us how to make America's scariest home videos.
Thanks, Robert. You know, in the head-spinning world of modern special effects... Oh! We Hollywood special effects experts have got to work our fingers to the bone to come up with some really eye-crossing effects. But with just a little ingenuity and a few simple tricks, you too can dazzle an audience with your very own horror home video. There are lots of ways to really stretch the limits of your imagination. Thanks to cutting-edge modern technology. But even us pros know we can no longer rely on cheap gimmicks to fool today's sophisticated moviegoers. Oh. Thanks, Linnea. So, if you don't want to lose your head, you'll have to do what we do. Just cross your fingers. And hope your effects turn out with a bang. Or maybe not. Have you ever wanted to just blow someone away? In a home video, of course. Well, I'm about to show you a way you can do it without anyone going to jail. It's easy. Here you go, Linnea. Give me your best shot. Pretty good, huh? Okay. So to make a bullet hole, it's a real killer. All you need is a button, some fishing line, and a little wax. Just tie a very thin fishing line to a small button. Now, fishing line is a good material to use because it's transparent, usually won't read on videotape. And if you do catch a glare, you can spray it black and it should take care of it. Next, paint a portion of the victim's forehead a bloody red color. There are a lot of different types of paint you can use. One of the easiest would be to pick up some acrylic paint at an art supply store. And you need to make sure that the area that you paint ends up being about the size of your button. Next, attach the button. Usually it'll just stick onto the paint, like that. After that, blend the button off with Mortician's wax. You can get Mortician's wax at a theatrical makeup supply house or your favorite funeral home. You also need to use cold cream to lubricate your fingers because the Mortician's wax is really sticky. It makes a big mess if you don't keep your fingers oiled up with it. Another thing that might help, you could use a dental spatula or even a popsicle stick might work to help blend the edges off. And you need to use as little wax as possible over the button so you create as small a bump on the forehead as you can. The last thing to do is press a little powder over the wound. That takes off the shine and helps blend the wax into the forehead. Also, while you're doing the makeup, you really need to be careful about this fishing line, because if you knock into it accidentally, it's going to yank it out, ruin your makeup, and lose a lot of time. Then just let her rip. Just let her rip. There we go. I hate it when that happens.
I just love horror home videos. They asked me to shoot one once, and you know what? I got a bullseye. Next, we're going to deaden things up with the Addams Family, and later, a tribute to that old cut-up, Freddy Krueger. So don't you cut out. We'll be right back.
It's alive! After a hard day in the lab, I like nothing more than a cold beer and a couple of videos. Bob liked it too. Yes. And now I can really kick back with Miller Lite and a genuine draft in Halloween costumes. And a special offer on a Frankenstein and Dracula dual pack from MCA Universal Home Video. Wherever you scream for Miller. We need to unearth a few more cases.
The Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood continues.
Here are two members of a family that not only does its own thing, it has its own thing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the new motion picture The Addams Family, Jimmy Workman and Carl Stryken, better known as Pugly Addams and Lurch.
Lurch and I are here today because the Horror Hall of Fame is giving its next award to the greatest comic books ever, and they asked us to present it. But Cousin Nick couldn't make it here. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next award goes to EC Comics.
Some comics are good, but most comics are killers. They kill time, they kill imagination, and they kill the urge to read books.
In the 1950s, if comics were killers, then mild-mannered publisher William M. Gaines was Public Enemy #1.
My father had been instrumental in starting comic books back in the 30s, and he had a whole stable of comics which included The Flash and Wonder Woman and a number of others, and he sold out his entire business to DC. He then went back in business and started little comic books for children. He called the outfit Educational Comics.
When Max Gaines was killed in an accident, Bill, who was planning to be a chemistry teacher, decided to concoct his own comic book formula. He changed the name to Entertaining Comics and started publishing Western, war, and crime comics. But in 1950, editor Al Feldstein conducted a creepy experiment in an issue of Crime Patrol.
We introduced the Crypt of Terror. And I kind of based it on what I envisioned when I used to listen to Arch Obler's Lights Out or The Witch's Tale on radio.
Gaines and Feldstein quickly realized that horror could be a hit.
We were so excited that we went ahead and changed the titles to Tales from the Crypt and the Vault of Horror.
The Haunt of Fear soon followed, and by early 1950, the first horror comic books were selling 500,000 copies per issue. Russ Cochran, who's been reprinting the original EC series, was typical of the kids that got hooked on EC horror.
I had about stopped reading comic books when I was 14, 15 years old. I'd sort of outgrown the superhero comics, and all of a sudden I picked up an EC comic, and here were comics that were written better and drawn better than anything I'd ever seen before, and they hooked me right back in.
Feldstein continued to create cover art and write stories based on Gaines's ideas, but they soon began to draw on a gruesome group of artists to bring EC's Tales of Terror to life.
Every story was written for the artist who drew it. Graham always got the dripping, rotting corpses, slimy, gooky stuff oozing out of the cellar kind of things. And Johnny Craig, who wrote his own stuff, everything was nice, clean looking, except terrible things were going on in this beautiful, clean situation. Joe Orlando could go either way. He could have a clean job or he could have an ooze job, and he did a lot of either.
Orlando himself remembers the awe inspired by another EC alumnus.
Jack Davis didn't sweat, and we all envied him. That he just tossed it off, and he's just pure genius, you know. It was rumored that he could do 4 complete pages a day if he wanted to. And we'd count it up, oh my God, he can make that much money.
EC artists were among the most talented in the history of comic art, and original artwork from their horror books has sold for as much as $10,000. But the ones most responsible for EC's success may have been its nefarious trio of nightmare narrators.
Oh yeah, there was the Crypt Keeper, who introduced stories from the Tales from the Crypt, the Vault Keeper, who did the Vault of Horror, and the Old Witch, who did the Haunt of Fear.
The Galunatics went right for the jocular vein, with a combination of wicked wit and putrid puns that pushed the stories along to their gruesome conclusions. One of them even deserves credit for naming EC's most popular publication.
So I think it was the Crypt Keeper. He used to say, "Welcome to EC's Mad Mag, Tales from the Crypt." And when we all decided to do a funny book, we cut it to Mad.
My favorite stories were always what I called walking corpses, which is some guy who had been done wrong and got buried, clawing their way out of the earth to take care of the guy what done him wrong.
Probably my favorite story was the grim fairy tale about the king and the queen who had the little pet mice, and they fed the little mice all kinds of goodies while the people were starving. And finally the people stormed the castle and took some half-starved rats and forced them down the mouths of the king and queen and sewed their mouths shut and stood around and cheered as the rats ate their way out of the pompous king and the pompous queen.
It wasn't necessarily that good triumphed over evil, because the triumph was not necessarily good. But something happened that gave a kind of morality to it. Twisted, I must admit, but a morality.
And the whole idea was like to scare people and scare little kids. And the more disgusting the stories were, the more we laughed.
But not everyone appreciated the joke. And in 1953, a Senate subcommittee convened to find out if comics created juvenile delinquents.
My name is William Gaines. I was the first publisher in these United States to publish horror comics. I'm responsible. I started them.
I don't know if you remember Mayor Walker, who once said, "I never knew a woman to be ruined by a book. And I never knew a child to be ruined by a comic book." It's just utter nonsense.
We were really the most shocked people in the world when we discovered that we were these terrible people who were causing juvenile delinquency in America, which is what happened and what put us out of business.
The controversy helped kill the horror comics, but E.C.'s gore stories wouldn't stay buried. Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror became movies in the 70s, and reprints of all the E.C. classics are now available in bookstores and on newsstands.
It's showtime!
And, thanks to HBO, the Crypt Keeper himself is popping up on cable.
Tales from the Crypt.
We've been very fortunate to have very talented people direct them and be in them and do the special effects for them. So the shows really came out very well. We have about 500 Crypt stories, so we can make these for a long time.
Well, as long as I don't wind up on the cutting room floor.
Vault of Horror, The Haunt of Fear, and Tales from the Crypt have been revolting readers now for nearly 40 years, and the macabre message remains the same.
Well, I hope that they all learned how to whistle when they pass the cemetery. You know, and we still believe that corpses are coming back and getting even.
Here to accept the award for EC Comics, it is publisher William M. Gaines.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I proudly accept this great honor on behalf of my unbelievably talented staff of editors, writers, and artists who were vilified in the early 50s by a Senate subcommittee on juvenile delinquency and by other magazine publishers who claimed we had destroyed the youth of America. It has taken almost 40 years for our work to be recognized. I thank my dear friend Lyle Stewart for helping me through the bad days. I thank my dear friend Russ Cochran, who has kept EC Comics alive all these years. I thank Joel Silver and his incredible group of movie makers who have made Tales from the Crypt the hottest and most successful original programming in home box office history. Finally, I thank the board of directors of the Horror Hall of Fame for this delightful vindication of our efforts.
He walks, he talks, he kills. When a little doll gets possessed by a serial killer, America's favorite playmate becomes horror's greatest slaymate. In our second nominated film, the shocking sequel, Child's Play 2.
Just fine.
How's it hanging, Phil?
Oh, I remember the good old days back in New York. We'd all just hang around Bill's office in the Vampire State Building. Next, we got a tribute to the original Batman that you'll really sink your teeth into. Plus more scare tactics with Steve and Linnea. But first, some messages of grave importance.
From Universal Studios, Florida, Secrets from the Horror Hall of Fame, brought to you by Nestle Morsels.
There's a famous movie monster who never wore any makeup. Don't go away. The only horror star to appear without any makeup. A victim of a distorting disease, Rondo turned tragedy into triumph and made his mark in horror history. I'm Robert Englund from the Horror Hall of Fame.
Like the next inductee, our next presenter only comes out at night. From the hit series Night Court, please welcome Richard Mall.
Our next inductee is a Hollywood legend who became a superstar overnight. With just one role, he left his mark on horror history. The mark of the vampire! And today, when it comes to terrifying audiences, he's still someone you can count on. Ladies and gentlemen, our third inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, Bela Lugosi.
He was born Bela Blasko on October 29, 1882, in the small Hungarian town of Lugos, from which he would eventually take his name. As a young actor, he performed in roles as diverse as Shakespeare's Romeo and Jesus Christ. He started a Hungarian theatrical group in New York, where a producer offered him an off-Broadway role, not realizing at first that Bela couldn't speak English. He learned his lines phonetically and received excellent notices for his passionate performance. Now Bela hoped to become a romantic star in America. But his menacing performance in his first Hollywood film, The Silent Command, foreshadowed the typecasting that would plague his career. A career that came to a turning point when he met this man, Horace Liverite. Liverite was producing a British stage thriller about a Transylvanian count who lived on the blood of his victims. At the suggestion of a friend, Liverite hired Lugosi to play the title role, Dracula. On October 5th, 1927, the atmosphere at Broadway's Fulton Theater was electric. Lugosi, appearing in a ghastly greenish makeup, enthralled the audience, a monstrous yet magnetically romantic Dracula. After a smash 6-month run, Lugosi moved west for a record-breaking road tour. In 1929, Universal Pictures announced its big-screen Dracula would star Lon Chaney, the movie's Man of 1,000 Faces. When Chaney developed cancer, Universal considered a dozen other actors, including Paul Muni and Conrad Veidt. But by now, the studio was feeling the effects of the Depression. Finally, Bela got the call he'd been waiting for. The role of Dracula was his, for a price. Just $500 a week for 7 weeks' work. He knew the part could make him a star. He was 48 years old. He couldn't say no.
I am Dracula.
Dracula was an instant hit and helped save Universal from financial ruin. The movie is sometimes criticized for being stagey and static, but Lugosi's performance still holds moviegoers spellbound.
Your will is strong, Van Helsing. More Wolfbane, more effective than Wolfbane, Count. Indeed.
No actor has ever been more closely identified with a single role. And in a very real way, Dracula was both the blessing and the curse that would follow Bela Lugosi to his grave.
You paint a charming picture, monsieur. One that I should like to see myself.
Following the success of Dracula, Bela appeared in 3 of his most memorable and monstrous roles. Dr. Miracle, the sideshow scientist behind the murders in the Rue Morgue. The half-human sayer of the law in The Island of Lost Souls. And the hypnotic Murder Legrand, master of the undead, in White Zombie. Lugosi had turned down the part of the monster in Frankenstein, the role that made Boris Karloff a star. But in 1934, Universal teamed the diabolical duo in The Black Cat, the first of 6 films in which they co-starred. Films that included The Raven, The Invisible Ray, Black Friday, The Body Snatcher, and Son of Frankenstein.
They die dead. I die live.
Igor is considered by many to be Lugosi's finest movie performance.
Hey! You spit on me. I'm sorry, I coughed. You see, bone gets stuck in my throat.
Bela returned as Igor in The Ghost of Frankenstein, and ultimately appeared as the monster in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. But by the late 40s, Lugosi was hopelessly typecast in Poverty Row horror spoofs. As his finances dwindled, Bela turned to the Straw Hat circuit, touring in summer stock in the only role he seemed to be remembered for. Once again, his fate was in the hands of Dracula.
I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula. But does Dracula know it?
In 1948, for the second and final time, Bela was back on the big screen as Dracula, plotting for plasma and Lou Costello's spare parts in the monster comedy classic Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Didn't I hear that you were going to masquerade ball?
Well, yes, we have our costumes out in the boat.
Ah, you young people, making the most of life while it lasts.
As these outtakes show, there were plenty of pranks and practical jokes on the set. But reportedly, the comedians treated Bela with nothing but respect. Dracula had been his first starring role for a major studio, and now, although he didn't know it, it would also be his last. For the next few years, Bela scraped by, appearing in cheap horror movies, performing in a Las Vegas revue, and doing magic tricks on TV, accompanied by the ever-present cape and coffin. In 1955, it seemed that Bela Lugosi had finally hit bottom when he announced that he was committing himself to the state hospital for drug addiction. He'd been using Demerol since the 40s to ease a leg problem. But Bela, at the age of 73, publicly faced his problem head-on and emerged triumphant.
You feel like your old self again. You feel like a millionaire. You feel like Dracula really felt, huh? Sure.
On August 11th, 1956, Bela Lugosi died quietly at home, reading a script for a movie he would have starred in called The Final Curtain. According to his wishes, he was buried in his Dracula cape. In death, as in life, Bela Lugosi was shrouded in the mystery of Dracula. On screen, he was the ultimate monster, and Bela Lugosi made that monster immortal. His 3 simple words, that eerie introduction, have fittingly become the never-ending epitaph of Bela Lugosi.
I am Dracula.
To accept the award for Bela Lugosi is a blood relative. And a third-generation Lugosi, his grandson, Jeff Lugosi.
Thank you. My grandfather left a wonderful legacy to grow up with. On behalf of the Lugosi family, I would like to thank you for honoring his career tonight. Bela Lugosi's movies entertained us all, and although he is no longer with us, the image he created will never die. Thank you.
Coming up next, we've got a tribute to the Nightmare Man you love to hate. Ooh, look, some of my favorite torture tools. Thumb screws, bamboo shoots, and beads. You'll drive anyone mad. Commercials.
Guests of the Horror Hall of Fame stay at the Universal City Hilton and Towers sleep comfortably close to the stars at the Universal City Hilton and Towers.
From Universal Studios, Florida, Secrets from the Horror Hall of Fame, brought to you by Nestle Morsels.
I'll let you in on Psycho's sweet secret after this. Psycho's shower scene was terrifying, but it wasn't blood that shocked millions of moviegoers. The movie was filmed in black and white, and when Hitchcock found red blood just wouldn't cut it, he used chocolate syrup instead. I'm Robert Englund from the Horror Hall of Fame.
Welcome back to the Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood.
Our third nominee for the best horror film of the year is the story of a young FBI agent who matches wits and wills with a brilliant psychopath. The result is a gripping psychological thriller that shatters the silence of the lambs.
What I want is a view. I want a window where I can see a tree, or even water. I want to be in a federal institution far away from Dr. Chilton.
What did you mean by fledgling killer? Are you saying that he's killed again?
I'm offering you a psychological profile of Buffalo Bill based on the case evidence. I'll help you catch him, Clarice.
All the inductees of the Horror Hall of Fame are chosen by the members of the Horror Hall of Fame Board of Directors. Each year, ballots are sent to the board members to solicit their nominations. Their votes are cast, and in the event of a tie, nominees are resubmitted for a final determination. Board members also decide the horror film of the year and special effects award recipients of the Sam.
They do not want to hear it. I'm sorry. Forget about this boring legal crap. Do you want to hear that? Did you come to be entertained? That's what I thought. Oh, yeah, you'd like the silence of the Sams. But it doesn't happen, mister. Actually, I'll take over. You can rest for a second, man. All right. So, this is actually a great night for horror fans, but it's also a very sad night because England's hosting again. But I'm glad to be back again this year on the Horror Hall of Fame. But I should have done the world's premiere. So you think I should have done that? Because who better? Oh! You know, I'm really upset because they missed a chance to make a really big horror movie this year. It's scary. It's about this big Japanese monster that comes and devours Hollywood. Just devours it. No one survives. No one can stop it. No one! The monster even has a scary name. It's called Sony! Oh! Seriously, though, this has also been a tragic year for the horror world because we lost one of our biggest and brightest stars. Someone who was senselessly and brutally taken from us. So on behalf of the Horror Hall of Fame, please join me now in paying our last respects to the memory of Mr. Freddy Krueger!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Something to me. I couldn't sleep at all last night. Just thinking of you. Lady Kingsbury ride. When I was tossing and tossing and turning all night. I kicked the blankets on the floor. Turned my pillow upside down. I never did before. Because I was tossing and turning and tossing and turning all night. Jumped out of bed, turned on the light. I pulled down the shade, went to the kitchen for a bite. Rolled up the shade, turned off the light. I jumped back into bed, it was the middle of the night. The clock outside was striking 4. Couldn't get you off my mind. I heard the milkman at the door. 'Cause I was
breaking TV.
Jumped out of bed, turned on the light, I pulled down the shade, went to the kitchen for a bite, rolled up the shade, turned off the light. I jumped back into bed, it was the middle of the night. That clock out there was striking 4. I couldn't get you off my mind. I heard the milkman at the door, because I was tossing and turning, yeah, tossing and turning. But day, I was a tossing and yeah. You know, I guess this was also a very good year because there's no more communism, there's no more war. Pee Wee Herman got, of course, the justice he deserved, and now no more Freddy movies. So thanks everyone and good night,
Now, I know you've got to be wondering how we stab people with sharp instruments in Hollywood. Well, we've come up with a technique that's a snap. Take a look at this. It's really just a phony screwdriver. All you've got to do is pick up a couple of brass tubes from your local hobby shop. While you're at it, pick up a couple of real screwdrivers. Now, make sure that one tube slides neatly into the other one. Next, attach the larger tube to a handle. Then slip in a spring. And slide the smaller tube in. There you go. Now, if you really want to have some fun, you can fill it with fake blood. That way you get a nice oozing wound when you pull the screwdriver out. With one of these babies, you can stab yourself all day long. And remember, always make sure you use the phony screwdriver when you stab yourself.
To miss my old friend Freddy Krueger. I should have said a few words at his funeral, but I just didn't have the guts. The Horror Hall of Fame continues with lots more shocks and surprises. Will you be back? Of course you will.
How do you salute a producer-director who has more than 200 movies to his credit and single-handedly helped establish more stars and directors than anyone else? Well, we didn't know, so we called 911 for help, and they sent over their very best. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the star of Rescue 911 and the captain of the Starship Enterprise, Mr. William Shatner.
Thank you very much. In 1961, that was a long time ago, our next honoree gave me one of my first motion picture roles. The film was called The Intruder. And although it wasn't a box office success at the time, today you can pick up a TV guide, turn to any day of the week, and there on that page, you still won't find The Intruder. But you will find some all-time horror classics, produced and directed by our next inductee to the Horror Hall of Fame, Roger Corman.
are about to enjoy an experience in extreme terror.
I'm not certain exactly what led me to make horror films.
From worlds beyond comes a weird and wanton intelligence.
My conscious mind tells me I'm an adult human being and I'm not afraid of anything.
Mysterious creatures thirsting for lovers' blood.
My unconscious mind tells me there's a lot to be afraid of.
Roger Corman has been called the greatest independent filmmaker in Hollywood history. And though he may not understand his taste for terror, he understood early on that with a little money and lots of ingenuity, he could film his fears for fun and profit.
I started in the motion picture business as a messenger at 20th Century Fox, worked my way up to the story department, then wrote and sold a story of my own, went along as associate producer for no salary, but I wanted the credit.
Roger soon decided he could do a better job making movies himself. So he raised $12,000 and produced Monster from the Ocean Floor, shot in just 6 days. The movie made $100,000 at the box office, and its success caught the attention of Jim Nicholson and Sam Arkoff, whose company went on to become American International Pictures.
I thought it had a commercial ring to it, the title, the theme. Wasn't much of a picture as such, but there were obvious qualities, particularly the fact that not too much money had been spent on it.
Next, Roger tried his hand at directing and launched his first wave of science fiction quickies.
The Day the World Ended, Not of This Earth, and A Great Early Winter, Attack of the Crab Monsters. As fast as I could make my films, I would get my cross back and I could continue shooting and then wait for the profits. And the great thing about American International was that there were almost always profits.
The profits were rarely invested in convincing special effects, though. The Beast with a Million Eyes was really just a tea kettle with some holes punched in it. And the creature from the haunted sea would make the Cookie Monster look menacing.
Fire, fall back!
The least threatening monster I ever ran from was what I called the big carrot. Somebody called it the cucumber. And what was it? It conquered the world. It looked like a big ice cream cone upside down with fringe on the bottom and some eyes, horrible eyes.
Corman also created storylines from headlines. When the Russians launched Sputnik, Corman countered with War of the Satellites. When bee pollen became the rage, Roger arranged his own sting operation. That hatched The Wasp Woman. Eventually, Roger played horror for humor. The result was a macabre comedy that became a Corman classic.
Feed me! Oh, take it easy, Dracula. What do you think I'm carrying here, my dirty laundry?
The Little Shop of Horrors is the gory story of a boy and his bloodthirsty pet plant. The movie eventually blossomed into an off-Broadway musical and a big-screen remake. But the original also featured the cameo appearance of a pain-loving dental patient played by Jack Nicholson.
No Novocaine. It dulls the senses.
This is gonna hurt you more than it is me.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Oh, my God, don't stop now!
What is the meaning of this?
In 1960, American International took a gamble and allowed Corman more time and money to make his first full-color, widescreen scare show. The Fall of the House of Usher was their biggest hit to date, and it led to a series of films loosely based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe. The Pit and the Pendulum, Tales of Terror, The Haunted Palace, The Mask of the Red Death, and The Tomb of Ligeia relied on gloomy, gothic settings, moody musical scores, and a star who became the suave, self-obsessed anti-hero of horror, Vincent Price.
I can hear the scratch of rat claws within the stone wall.
People are always asking me, did it worry you that you were stuck in that kind of film? I really wasn't, because the parts were all so different. And they made my name in film. I'm very grateful to Roger for that, for those pictures.
Get out of my sight.
In 1963, Corman directed what some critics consider to be his masterpiece, X, The Man with X-ray eyes. Stephen King has called it one of the most interesting and offbeat little horror movies ever made. And while Ray Milland gets a glimpse of eternity, it's con man Don Rickles who can only see dollar signs.
You're out of your mind.
But you can look right through a guy and see what's wrong with him, can't you? You said you wanted money, didn't you?
He gave him great advice, Roger Corman. He always said to me, why do you want money? That was a big problem when you did those pictures with Roger Corman. You didn't get money. You got an 8x10 glossy of him.
When Roger quit directing to form New World Pictures in 1970, he continued his personal tradition of trying new talent. More than anyone in Hollywood, Corman is credited with giving big breaks to actors like Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, Peter Fonda, and Dennis Hopper, and directors Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese. When Gremlins director Joe Dante got the media assignment to direct Piranha, he benefited from Corman's counsel.
The best piece of horror advice Roger ever gave to me was to sit down a lot on the set. He said that if you don't sit down, movie making will be a horror, and he was right. Unfortunately, he never provided any chairs.
Now, as the head of Concord New Horizons, Roger's still making movies and providing a proving ground for the talent of tomorrow.
It's something Roger takes a great deal of pride in, and he should. And I wish there were more Roger Cormans out there, but I guess someone as unique as Roger, it's hard to duplicate.
In 1991, Roger broke new ground by getting his own star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. And he received one of the movie world's rarest honors, top billing in a film that marked his return to directing, Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound.
I think Roger should be inducted into the Horror Hall of Fame because of his contributions to this business. He is an institution.
I know that there are directors who have made a single good horror picture. I don't know anybody in that field who's made as many good ones.
Those pictures have lasted a long time now. They're always on television. They're always being shown in theaters, which is a proof that they were well made.
It's very hard to imagine what the impact of those pictures was at the time, but they were really trendsetters. Congratulations, Roger. You truly do deserve to be in the Horror Hall of Fame. Any director who's ever worked for you could attest to that. Roger, thank you for the opportunity to direct. I continue to love the job, and there isn't a week that goes by that I don't use something that you talked about and taught me, or tell a really great anecdote about you. Thank you for all those things, and congratulations tonight.
Because I was one of the many people who Roger helped out along the way, it gives me great pleasure to present this award to my good friend, Roger Corman.
Thank you, Horror Hall of Fame, not only for making this a night I'll always remember, but for giving recognition to my favorite genre and the respect it deserves. And for all you horror fans out there, I thank you also for letting us into your unconscious and screw you up forever. Thank you.
All us stars in Hollywood have to keep in shape. So I developed my own special workout. No gain, all pain. Coming up next, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. The first time I saw her, she stole my heart. Now I finally got it back. Don't go away if you know what's bad for you.
Promotional consideration for the Horror Hall of Fame provided by Stetson Cologne. Great masculine scent that's easy to wear and hard for a woman to resist. Stetson fits.
Exclamation, the fragrance that makes a statement without saying a word. Punctuate the air with wit and style. Exclamation, a now kind of fragrance from Coty. The Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood will be right back.
From Universal Studios Florida, Secrets from the Horror Hall of Fame. Brought to you by Raisinets.
We dug up a live one about Night of the Living Dead. Stay tuned.
While the living dead were feasting on flesh, producer John Russo was starving for money. So he made a double or nothing bet with the film lab over a game of chess. Russo won. Well, developing the film would have cost him an arm and a leg. Robert Englund here from the Horror Hall of Fame. Here to present a special award, please welcome the horror industry's top spookswoman, Elvira!
You can't talk about horror movies without mentioning the 4 M's. Monsters, madmen, mutants, and mummies. And you can't mention the 4 M's without talking about the studio that brought them to life, even after death. I am talking about the birthplace of the movie's classic monsters, Universal Studios. Universal Pictures founder and president Carl Laemmle produced his first horror hit back in 1923 when Lon Chaney climbed the backlot bell tower as Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Chaney was soon shocking audiences in another Universal superproduction as the enigmatic Eric, better known to silent movie fans as the Phantom of the Opera.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Dracula, the studio's first all-talking, all-stalking monster, was Universal's big hit of 1931, and Frankenstein followed in its footsteps to become a box office bonanza 10 months later. By the time the studio took the wraps off The Mummy and Frankenstein fashioned a bride for his creature, Universal had become known as Hollywood's undisputed home of horror. In 1941, a new face and an old name were added to Universal's terror team when Lon Chaney Jr. starred as the moonstruck monster in The Wolfman. In the 50s, the cars had fins, so the monsters grew gills, and the creature from the Black Lagoon made a big splash and became one of Universal's most popular late-model monsters. From the Birds to Jaws, to Chucky's latest terror tantrums, Universal has been on the cutting edge of horror for almost 75 years, and we have every reason to believe the future will be just as frightening. Now, to accept this special award is the niece of Universal Studios founder Carl Laemmle. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Carla Laemmle.
I'm very, very proud to be here this evening to accept this prestigious award on behalf of my uncle, Carl Laemmle. On behalf of the entire Laemmle family, I wish to thank the Board of Directors of the Horror Hall of Fame for this wonderful tribute and honor. Thank you very, very much.
The horror really hits home when alien invaders find themselves in L.A. with a few days to kill. Our next nominated film, Predator 2.
Backing up. It's moving away from them.
He sees them, Garber. Your boys have been made.
Sir, it's circling around behind them.
Get them out, Garber. They're walking into a trap. Get them out! That Keith, he's right behind the third floor structure. Right there.
Who is this? Clear the line.
He sees the damn light. Turn them off. Turn them off.
Moving down on your position from the right. Garber,
Where is he? I can't see him. He's right there. He's right there. Damn it, where is he? Oh, give me a coordinate. Where is he?
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You don't need state-of-the-art equipment or expensive materials to pull off an impressive special effect. There are a lot of things you can do right at home with your own video camera. For our next trick, we'll need a mirror. What do you think of this one, kids? This is a good one. Whee! All you need for this is a big mirror and a video camera hooked up to a TV set. The camera should be placed at a slightly inward angle toward the mirror, and the mirror should be perpendicular to your face. Put your face halfway behind the mirror to start off like this. The closer you put your face, the better you'll look. It helps get rid of the line. Just use your TV set to help guide you along. And if you like this one, wait till you see the next one. Hi, Linnea. This is one of my favorite tricks, forced perspective. And it's something you can have a lot of fun with at home. All you need is a wide open space and a little imagination. See how easy that is? All we did was raise and lower the camera until this tabletop lined up with the one I was standing on about 20 feet back there. It's the oldest trick in the book. It's a cinch. With special effects, the possibilities are endless. Have you ever wondered how to drop a 10-ton safe on someone's head?
Put yourself on me, you guys.
Oh, this is such an exciting night. All the biggest names in the business are here. I guess you could say it's like the night of 100 scars. Coming up next, a tribute to the movie that pigeonholed Alfred Hitchcock. Now you're not thinking of departing, are you? Perish the thought.
If E.T. was kid stuff, it certainly wasn't child's play. But if E.T. and Chucky ever do square off, our next two presenters definitely deserve ringside seats. Please welcome the star of E.T., D. Wallace Stone, an Academy Award nominee, the voice of Child Plays Chucky, Mr. Brad Dourif.
Thank you. Can't believe I actually didn't follow 3 kids out here. After Psycho, moviegoers couldn't imagine how Alfred Hitchcock could scare them next.
What they didn't know what was waiting in the wings.
Our 5th inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, The Birds.
How do you do? My name is Alfred Hitchcock, and I would like to tell you about my forthcoming lecture. It is about the birds and their age-long relationship with man.
In 1963, Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, became a master of horror. And the rest of us, well, we never looked at our fine feathered friends in quite the same way.
I think the Birds was way ahead of its time. And to think of what they did with special effects in 1961 and 1962 to really pull this film off.
It was the fall of 1960, and Hitchcock had just released Psycho, a film that was breaking box office records. But instead of basking in its glory, Hitchcock was out searching for his next project. He found it in a short story called The Birds, about a farmer and his family mysteriously attacked by murderous birds. He called art director Robert Boyle to see if the birds could be captured on film.
I think in most respects, The Birds is the most complicated film I've ever worked on.
In the 60s, special effects were light years away from Star Wars and Terminator. Hitchcock had few choices, and each one had its problems. He could use opticals to superimpose the birds over a scene, but that was tedious and expensive. Mechanical birds were expensive and unrealistic. And real birds, thousands of birds, were hard to come by and difficult to work with. Hitchcock decided to use all three.
I said to Hitch, from minute one, I said, how far can I go? And he said, you write whatever you want to write, and I'll get it on the screen.
But the birds turned out to be Hitchcock's greatest challenge. With 412 laborious special effects shots and 40 pens full of birds that didn't take direction very well, the man who always had a plan was basically flying on a wing and a prayer.
We couldn't plan the birds. I mean, he had a plan of sorts, obviously, but we had to be guided by what was available, what was possible. There were times when, ideas could be mooted, but, just out of the question. We couldn't get the birds to do the things. So he was shifting ground all the time, which was unusual for him because it was an unusual picture for him.
Hitchcock wanted only one thing from the birds: sheer horror. That's why the birds were his main concern, and why he decided they had to be the stars. So he gave the most sought-after parts in Hollywood to newcomers. Tippi Hedren, whom he had spotted in a commercial on the Today Show, Suzanne Pleshette, Rod Taylor, and Veronica Cartwright. Jessica Tandy was the only seasoned actress in the lot.
As Hitch put it to me, he said, there are only two stars in this movie, Evan, the birds and me. That was it. And that's all he wanted to do was this birds attacking people for no apparent reason. We never once tried to explain it in the movie, why it was happening. And that was a deliberate, creative decision.
Hitchcock would only go so far. He hoped his audience's imaginations would take them the rest of the way. But The Birds was a big departure for Hitchcock, and there were times when even Hitch felt a little cagey about his undertaking.
I can remember on one occasion at Bodega Bay, he turned around and, apropos of nothing, said to me suddenly, we're not making a science fiction movie, Al. And I thought, well, who the hell said we were? And I said to him, well, what genre are we in, Hitch? And he didn't say a word. He just walked away.
Horror. Pure horror. That's what he was after. Even if it meant cast and crew had to suffer long hours and dangerous scenes.
I had been told that this scene was going to be used with mechanical birds because it would be very dangerous. And just before we started filming, the assistant director came into the room and he said, and he couldn't look at me. He looked at the ceiling and the walls and the floor. I said, what's the matter with you? And Jim Brown said, the mechanical birds don't work. We have to use real ones. And out the door he went. Well, I just was stunned. There were two prop men with huge cartons with ravens and seagulls, which they alternately started hurling at me. It took us a complete week to do this scene, and it became more horrendous and more exhausting as the week went by. At one point, one of the birds who was sitting on my shoulder decided to jump and, came very close to my eye, and I just got all the birds off. This was Friday afternoon. And I got all of the birds off of me and started to cry, and that was the end of the filming.
I remember being frightened of this big seagull that they were going to throw at me. So I decided that I would go over and speak to Mr. Hitchcock. Now, I was about 8 years old, rather small. He was very big. And I went up to him, rather frightened, and I said, Mr. Hitchcock, I'm a little bit scared of this bird. I'm afraid it might kill me in this scene. And he looked down at me and he said, don't worry, my dear, it's your last scene in the picture anyway.
You'd go home at night and it was like you'd never noticed so many crows sitting on your front lawn before. And all of a sudden you go, why are there so many birds?
The Birds was truly ahead of its time. But then Hitchcock was always one step ahead, trying things that others didn't dare, creating classics like The Birds that continue to horrify audiences everywhere.
It is truly a horror film. I mean, of the first caliber. Very, very sophisticated people have said to me that this film has really frightened them.
It does leave a lot to your imagination. I think what's scary about the whole thing is the fact that it's something that you see every day.
Oh! Now, why would he do that? Most peculiar. What on earth?
They're coming! They're coming!
And now we'd like you to meet an actress who as a child was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and as an adult was manipulated by J.R. Ewing.
Please welcome Morgan Brittany.
Thank you very much. It was my great pleasure to work with Alfred Hitchcock in The Birds. Now to accept the award, it's also a great pleasure to introduce to you the star of The Birds, Miss Tippi Hedren.
Thank you for honoring The Birds. You know, it doesn't take a secret agent to appreciate the vision of Alfred Hitchcock. And there isn't a shadow of a doubt that he was one of our greatest directors. And before this lady vanishes tonight, let me say I applaud your decision to honor Mr. Hitchcock and this film. Born under Capricorn, I am lucky and grateful to be a part of The Birds. I am very proud. It's a timeless classic. And how do I know? A little birdie told me. Thank you. Thank you.
Tippi Hedren was wonderful in The Birds, but I think her co-star should have been Gregory Peck. Coming up next, the moment everyone has been waiting for. No, not the end of the show. The winner of the best horror film of the year. But first, something really foul. Commercials!
The best horror film of the year is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft Light, the light beer with big draft taste.
When a man's mind is pushed to the edge of reality, audiences are pushed to the edge of their seats. In our fifth and final nominee for Best Horror Film of the Year, Jacob's Ladder.
Where do you want to go? Home? This is your home. You're dead.
Dead? No. Oh, I just hurt my back. I'm not dead.
What are you then?
I'm alive.
And what are you doing here? What is happening? There is no out of here. You've been killed. Don't you remember?
Our next presenter is a man whose career is so remarkable, it's frightening. I take that back. His career is so frightening, it's remarkable. No matter how you say it, he's a legendary star and one of the first inductees into the Horror Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, I take great pleasure in introducing the Merchant of Menace, Mr. Vincent Price.
Thank you. The 5 nominees for Best Horror Film of the Year are Misery, Child's Play 2, The Silence of the Lambs, Predator 2, Jacob's Ladder. And the winner is, I'm going to give you that, Tony. Thank you. Silence of the Lambs. Congratulations. Accepting for Silence of the Lambs is the executive producer, Gary Getzman. $2 million. Thank you.
I need about 50 of these, I think. We always thought we were making a romantic comedy. I'm kind of surprised at this award. I don't know. Anyway, on behalf of Jonathan Demme and all the wonderful and creative people involved with making Silence of the Lambs, we thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay tuned for more of the Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood.
From Universal Studios Florida, secrets from the Horror Hall of Fame, brought to you by Raisinets.
Bela Lugosi's cape cloaked a secret he took to his grave. I'll tell you more after this.
Promotional consideration for the Horror Hall of Fame provided by Iron Cologne. Rugged, sexy, distinctively masculine. Pump some iron today. Lady Stetson, the all-American fragrance for today's spirited woman. Lady Stetson, a declaration of independence. Wolverine for your NES. Battle Magneto and Sabretooth with your adamantium claws and berserker rage in the X-Men Battle of All Time. Wolverine from LJN.
You bought it, Matt.
Bela Lugosi was truly haunted by his most famous role, Dracula. He always wanted to be buried wearing his famous cape and ring. On August 16th, 1956, his final wish was granted. I'm Robert Englund from the Horror Hall of Fame.
Congratulations to all of tonight's inductees, and a special thanks to my good friend who rose for the occasion, the Crypt Keeper.
Thanks, Robert. It's really been a night to dismember. See you on Tales from the Crypt, my little hauntlings. Nighty-night, boys and ghouls.
Thanks for watching. And for all you Freddy fans, I have a special announcement to make. Next year, actually, I will be back to host the Horror Hall of Fame, Part 3!
The Horror Hall of Fame has been brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft Light, the beer with the big draft taste. And by rich, creamy Nestle Toll House morsels. Make your house a Toll House. And by S.C. Johnson, the makers of Shout.
Air transportation provided by U.S. Air, the official airline of the Horror Hall of Fame. U.S. Air begins with you. Guests of the Horror Hall of Fame stay at the Universal City Hilton and Towers. Sleep comfortably close to the stars at the Universal City Hilton and Towers. Preferred Stock, the extra smooth cologne for an extra special man. A distinctive gift from the House of Stetson. Le Fleur, the captivating gift collection of personal and home fragrance items inspired by the turn of the century. La Fleur, somewhere inside, romance blossoms.
It's comedy and hard-hitting action tomorrow afternoon at 4 when Clint Eastwood and Sandra Locke star in Every Which Way But Loose here on Channel 28. Next up, it's Memories Then and Now.
When the person who